Live yet? Okay. Thanks, Jared. I think we're live. All right. So, hello everybody. I'm Art Chang. I'm the chair of the Voter Assistance Advisory Committee, and welcome to our May 13th, 2013 meeting of the Voter Assistance Advisory Committee. Because we don't have a quorum right now, we're going to start with the public hearing aspect of the meeting. And I guess the first item on the agenda here is opening remarks from the chair. So I'd like to say welcome everybody and thank you all for coming today. I'm very, very proud to present the 2012 and 2013 annual report. There are copies circulating around the room. And it really highlights the great work that the staff has done over the past year, as well as highlights for work that's anticipated to be done over the coming year. In particular, I think there are a few things that you'll hear about. The NYC Votes roll tool, our promise to use technology to change how people interface with their elected government. So we'll begin to see the first pieces of that today. Also, Anita Coward-Mayers and her amazing team have done some terrific work, which is detailed in this report. We also have a very robust legislative agenda. And for those who haven't had a chance to see it, it begins on page 18, and I'd urge you all to look at it. They are a series of recommendations that we believe are best practices for elections going forward. So I think with that, I am going to turn it over to Amy Lopress, the Campaign Finance Board's Executive Director.
Okay. Again, welcome. I just want to give you an update sort of on the work of the Campaign Finance Board generally. In addition to our work with the Voter Assistance Advisory Committee, the CFB, all of its work is targeted to get more New Yorkers involved in the election process and have the elections focused on New Yorkers instead of special interests. And our 25-year history with public financing program has really succeeded in doing that. And one evidence of that is that the state now is considering using the Campaign Finance Board as a model for potential state legislation for public financing on the state level. Such a bill has passed in the Assembly last week and has been introduced in the Senate. Over the past couple of weeks, I have testified before two different Senate committees, the Independent Democratic Committee and the Senate Elections Committee last Tuesday. So I'm very pleased that all our work is recognized as being a model possibly for the state's administration of public financing. Also, as we gear towards the 2013 election, one of the major aspects of our campaign finance work is to provide public disclosure of candidates' financing, where they get their money from and where they spend it. And to that end, there is another filing day on this coming Wednesday, May 15th. And then finally, we also are looking forward to the day when candidates decide whether or not they are going to join the public financing program, and that day certifications are due on June 10th of this year, and the certification form is available to candidates on our website currently. I want to talk a little bit about the report that the Voter Assistance just issued on April 30th. As Art mentioned, the report looks back at the year that just happened, a number of the initiatives. Anita's going to talk about some of those. It also analyzes some voting statistics, which unfortunately for the people of New York are still low. We still have a very not acceptably low turnout in our elections, and hopefully we can turn that around. Finally, the report also looks forward to what we're going to do for the 2013 elections, and as Art mentioned, we have this exciting mobile app that you're going to see a demonstration of. We're going to talk about our video voter guide a little bit tonight, but also we have the print voter guide and online voter guide that we produce, and the print guide is mailed to 8.1 million copies will be mailed this year to voters, that every household that has a registered voter in New York City, in English, Spanish, Chinese, Korean, and Bengali this year. We also are in the process of planning our debate program for citywide candidates this year to educate the voters about them. And we are in the process of mobilizing our partners in all 5 boroughs, and again, Onita is going to talk a little bit more about that. Finally, the report has, as Art mentioned, some legislative recommendations to make the process of voting and registering to vote easier and more efficient for all New Yorkers, and hopefully those recommendations will encourage people to vote. Hopefully some of them will get passed on the state level, and if you want to see the details of them, you are welcome to have a report. It's all, we have hard copies here, but it's also available on our website. So now I turn it over to Anita.
Great, good evening, everyone. Well, my comments this evening are going to be brief because I have some wonderful partners who are joining us today, and I really want each of us to get to hear from each other, most importantly. But before we get into that, I just wanted to thank everyone for coming, of course. And yes, the annual report is out. It talks about not only the work that we did, but that we couldn't have done any of this work without our partners and all of the community groups, and really the voters of New York City. And while we continue to want to grow our voter participation, there are people out there who are engaged, and we want to make sure that we capitalize on that as well, and that we hold on to those people, and that we leverage what is out there. We just left the federal election, and there was a lot of excitement and a lot of buzz, and clearly here we all work very hard to do that. But as we move into the municipal elections, we know that our local elections are very vital and very important for us. And we know that, it's the first time in 12 years that New Yorkers will elect a new mayor. There's going to be a lot of change, and this year is going to be an exciting year. So we're really looking forward to working with our partners again. We need them again. Last year, in the report, it talks about the various activities that we had, Your Vote Counts, with the Commission on Women's Issues. And we also we participated in National Voter Registration Day, where we had a big voter registration jam, and it was hosted by Hot 97 and by Rosario Dawson. And that was wonderful. And we, for the first time, put together a street team, and it was the NYC VAAC Street Team, and we were able to use these young people to go into the communities based on the report that we had commissioned from NYU Wagner School. And we were able to go in further and work with partners such as Popular Community Bank and many others to go into communities and to not only register them to vote, but to really start to talk to people, and to talk to them about what, how they feel about voting, what is important to them, how would they like to see changes made in our electoral system as well. So we kicked off this year with our partner breakfast, and we were very happy to say about 50 people attended. And it was held at KPMG, one of the offices of one of our partners, and that was successful. And from there, we're putting together our plans for this year. One of the potential partners who came to that breakfast, and I'm happy to report today that Lincoln Center attended, and they really took a lot of interest into our Youth Poet Laureate program. And I have to say also, because we were introduced to them by Councilwoman Gail Brewer, and I know, Will, you're here today also, so thank you for that introduction. So Will, you'll hear first again today, is that we have a date. So the date for the Youth Poet Laureate Competition Final Slam is going to be held at Lincoln Center on October 17th. So everyone, please save the date. We'll start working on that to make sure everyone knows about it. But that is very, very important because it is one of the programs that we have for the youth population, for youth and young adults, to make sure that there is a place for them where they can talk about their thoughts about the electoral process and how they feel about voting, and to go out and to encourage their peers to register to vote as well. So I'd like to start to invite some of our partners who are here today. I thank them because they took the time to read through our annual report and to find those things that they wanted to share with us, how they felt about it. So today we're going to hear from Popular Community Bank, from Citizens Union, Women's City Club, Youth Civic Leadership Academy. So if I could invite Dawn Perillo from Popular Community Bank to join us. Thank you.
Good evening.
Thank you.
As you mentioned, my name is Dawn Perillo. I'm the Vice President and Regional Marketing Manager for Popular Community Bank. I also manage all the community relations for the bank. I just want to share with you our commitment and our partnership with NYC VAAC and the New York City Finance Campaign Board. Even when I received an email inviting me to join, in corporate America things can be a little, sticky sometimes, and so I just went straight to my manager, who is the president for the region, also the head of government affairs for the bank, and I said, Brian, I was invited to speak. What would you think about it? And his answer was an immediate yes. There were no questions. Our commitment is clear. And just to kind of share in his own words something that he shared, that we are a community bank that cares deeply about the people we serve. We want all community members to have the tools they need to participate in our democratic process and to make informed decisions about the issues we have an opportunity to vote on. And that's exactly what we stand for. Most people think of us as a bank. We are a community partner. Just to share, we got to know Nita and NYC VAAC last year during the election revving up. And for the bank in our region, we're looking at 450 employees. So that's the reach. We had 38 branches. So that was our network, predominantly in New York City, 32 branches. And household-wise, we have over 17 million households that we're looking at across the region that we're able to reach out to. 70% of them are in low to moderate income areas. We also know, based on our conversations, that many of them are low turnout areas. So the one thing we did is we used our bank. We used our banking tools to reach out to these groups. So one, we put messages on our bank statements. So each and every one of the households received notes to talk about upcoming elections, the importance of going out to register and to vote. We also had signage in our branches. We had cards that were put out. And specifically, we allowed NYC VAAC to tell us, where do you need to reach out to people? There were 8 branches in Brooklyn, Queens, and the Bronx that they selected, that they wanted the street teams to come out to table, to talk to people, to help register them and help answer any questions. We did that in the end of the middle of the summer. It was the end of July, beginning of August. They were able to reach lots and lots of people. We also had a social media campaign. So in our website, in our blog, as well as our Facebook, we talked about the upcoming dates. We really wanted people to understand the importance of voting. We also are very engaged in the community, as I said, and Make a Difference Day is right before when you have to go out to vote. If you're not sure, it's a day of going out and volunteering in the community, 4th Saturday in October. And what we did is we used a voting campaign so that people would go to our Facebook page and actually understand that if they vote, they can impact the actual results. So we had people go on Facebook and vote on an organization that they felt, the community, we should be supporting. So based on the Facebook voting, we actually had more people vote than any other region in the US, happy to say, and I think it has to do with the partnership. We wound up giving 2 grants out to 2 organizations. They were $1,000 each, but it was based on the voice of the community going out and taking action and voting. We're looking at redoing something similar to that, but really doing it more in the branches so that we can have those people that don't have access to technology to be able to do that. We have, this year, we're going to definitely be on the ATM screens. It's a project we started last year. There was a technological little glitch that when the screens went, they didn't show up. So we're actually revisiting that. So in all of our bank ATM screens, they're going to see the important dates coming up. So they know to not just, they can come out and register as well as to vote. So they understand the importance of that. Just really from my own, that talked a little bit about the bank partnership, but just, as a constituent, I wanted to share that the importance of access to me. I am a family. I have a son. He is 20 years old, and last year was the first year he was able to vote in a major election. For us as a family, it's important. We're committed. I'm happy to be part of a company as well as a family that's committed. We got up really, really early. We work in different places. My son commutes to school in Long Island, so he has a 2-hour commute. I have to commute in. My husband goes everywhere. So we got up. We were out at a little after 6:30 so we can go to our local site, which, by the way, had changed. And it was very confusing leading up to it. I know that I had to make lots of calls because it was very confusing. I always went to the same spot. I remember years ago when it was across the street and then it moved. And now it moved and it was a little confusing. I wanted to make sure we knew where to go because as a voter, I know if I showed up at the wrong place, I'm not going to be able to vote, or at least that's how it was historically, and I wanted to be able to complete that process. So we got out to the new place. It was a little anxiety as a family member, but it was my son's first time. And this was really, really pivotal. I actually captured it in a photo as well. And as we got there, you know, we really felt accomplished as a family. And, you know, he voted. My son wanted his independence. He went on his own side. I said, didn't you want help? And he was like, I think I got this. It was a little hard because we saw him eventually go to someone else and ask, but he wanted to show that independence because he knew it was a pivotal milestone in his life as well. So now, finished voting. We're all great. We all hug and kiss, and we move on. We get to work. Unfortunately, no, we had the hurricane right before that. So I did hear on the news, and it was only because I watched New York One, but I saw on the news that you can go anywhere to vote. It was kind of, that was the message I got. So as I get to my office, on our offices, which are downtown here in the financial district, we have about 100 employees. I do know historically, because whenever it's time to vote, I ask people, hey, are you going out? Are you going to vote? And a lot of people give excuses. Oh, I couldn't leave early. I'm not going to get home in time. And I hear things. And I was like, wait, you can go anywhere. So you guys need to find. So we actually went and found where the local places were, and we sent people out to vote. It was kind of our own little internal kind of personal campaign. But I thought it was the most novel idea as a voter, the concept that I can go anywhere. I know we had a tragedy, we had a disaster happen, but I just would like to speak on behalf of my own opinion, my family, and those I work with, how much easier it would be for people to be able to go out and vote anywhere. Let's go to registration. I've registered God knows when, I don't know how long ago. My son, when he was 18, he got registered. But there are people that just don't, for whatever reason. How much easier, and then we have these deadlines, and I have to tell you, they were even confusing for me. You know, trying to help people understand, like, August 31st for which one? And then, you know, we were going through all these dates. So I think it's also important to understand that when they can register shouldn't be so limited. How ideal, when I was reading through, I printed out my own copy, because when I got the email, I printed out, I actually was told I had to fly on short notice to Puerto Rico this weekend. So I got this on Thursday. I flew out Friday. This came with me. I read the whole thing, page to page, talking about commitment. But it was so educational because even working as a close partner, there was so much learning for me. And the fact that I had access to this and was able, and it's very easy to read. I have to compliment whoever put this together. It was very easy to read. But knowing that it would be so much easier, if I can register. They talk about online voting with DMV. Confusing, I'm sorry, limited. You should be able to vote like any other state, online, completely, not have to print out and send it if it's not with DMV to have your signature. You should be able to do it online. You should technologically be up to par with the other states. Should be able to register anytime, even as well as the day. If I show up, I go, I want to vote, I should have that ability. I think I've pretty much said all I came to say, and that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor.
I have a question.
Oh, okay.
Just I think it would be helpful. It's a very fantastic enthusiasm and
Thank
just really great commitment. I wish every bank in New York City would share your enthusiasm. I'm not sure how many hundreds of thousands of ATMs we had, but if everyone did what yours did, that would be fantastic. We need to do a case study on this. But just a question. So for your bank, do you have can you tell us how many consumers you reach through these types of campaigns? It'd be very interesting. Through Facebook, Twitter,
Yeah,
the ATMs.
You know, and I didn't come prepared at numbers, so I apologize, but I do know that our Facebook and our social media campaign program is relatively new. We just started it last year. Prior to this, we hired an actual manager for the program. We started with a couple of hundred, and I know we're in the thousands. I don't know if it's 2 or 3 or 4,000 Facebook likes or people that have friends at the page. ATMs, I'm trying to think. We have at least 2 in each location. I think we're in the 70 to 80 location when it's the number of our ATMs that we have. When it comes to households, I believe and I'm kind of going on memory, it's 17 million households that we have, households. So we don't look at the counts, we look at actually how their households did, and, you know, some people live together, whatever the case is. It's a really large amount of numbers, but more importantly, the neighborhoods in where we serve are typically the underserved communities, those that have less knowledge or less access, or really don't have people that are as engaged, and we really want to be sure that we're that medium, which they know they can go to. They do trust us, and we like to bring in partners that are key, that can help build and give them those tools. As I read Brian's quote, our region manager, we really want to make sure we equip them with those tools, and it is a large number. It's a very, I just don't have the exact numbers, and I apologize.
Thank you for.
Thank you so much.
Corporate citizenship is great.
You're welcome.
Yes, back to you.
You're very welcome.
Okay, so next, Marjorie from Women's City Club. Marjorie
Okay.
Shea.
Marjorie Gallagher Shea, Women's City Club, and tonight I'll be making a few remarks for the League of Women Voters. They couldn't have a representative here. But we want to thank you for including the civic groups in all your efforts. You really have done a fine job of keeping us informed, and we appreciate that. And your annual report this year, we've commented, Women's City Club has commented on your last two annual reports, but this one is really very good as compared to what you've done before. And so we're glad that you continue your outreach to, as the charter says you're supposed to do, to communities where there's low voter turnout, with your street teams, and your cooperation with the banks and the youth and the QE and your taxi service. I mean, that was really kind of innovative. I'm waiting to see what you can come up with next year. But we were asked to sort of comment on your the area of your report on legislative recommendations. And this is something new for the Voter Assistance Commission, although it was in the charter that you are supposed to recommend changes, reforms that will increase voter turnout and so forth. And so, in many cases, as you admit at the end of your report, these in the most part are not new ideas. I mean, we've been talking about them for a decade or maybe 2 decades. But I think you're sort of reviving the conversation. And I'd like to put in a few points. We definitely agree with your statement that we've changed the way we vote, but we have not fundamentally changed our laws. The whole state election law should be gone through and revised. And also, there's the Sandy lesson. As the previous speaker mentioned, we need to be more flexible in the methods to cast ballots. And we hope that we have more than 24 hours for the governor to give an executive order that people in the affected areas should be able to vote anyplace, because making up the rules to count those affidavit ballots is not an easy task, and we can't do that every election. But I'd like to go on to some of your recommendations. While Women's City Club supports a professional, nonpartisan election administration, and we definitely need to have an executive director at the City Board of Elections. We are not for nonpartisan elections per se. We rejected that when it was proposed in the charter amendment, but that was a different thing. Number two, instant runoff voting. Women's City Club and indeed League of Women Voters has done a great deal of work on instant runoff voting. And we supported that. We were hoping that you could easily do it for the city council special elections where there's a vacancy. Those are already nonpartisan elections. You could do, and also you could do it this year for military voters, but it's kind of too late right now. We're almost at the end of May. The petitioning period is done, but, and we support, as you say, putting off that runoff election. It could have been done for the military voters. They're not going to be able to participate in the runoff primary this year. The third thing, WCC, Women's City Club, of course, supports online voter registration and other methods to simplify. We have no position on the change in party enrollment that you recommend. I know the governor has talked about this. A lot of people have talked about you have to wait over a year to change your party enrollment. But the rationale for putting that in the first place was for people, fear of people party rating, switching. I can't tell you how many people that I talked to in this last presidential election wanted to vote in the Republican primary because they were so upset about some of the candidates that were opposed to Mitt Romney and so forth, but they couldn't, of course. But the problem is, had those people been able to, they would have switched and voted in the opposite party primary, not for the proper reason, but just because they wanted to affect the election. And also, you proposed pre-registration for 16 and 17-year-olds. Although that seems like it would be a good idea, of course, to get these young people, teenagers, enrolled. But you've also, when you enroll in New York State, when you register in New York State, you also enroll in a political party. Having taught 16 and 17-year-olds in the courses on American history, I know that they're subject to group pressure and peer pressure to enroll, and they would be enrolled in different parties. So I think you've got to think that through. Also, that population, once they turn 18, often leave the community, so they want to vote in their where they're living, where they're going to college, or if they're in the military, where they're going, so that the residence changes. Now, and one other thing about cross endorsements, the Wilson Pecula, as you report, named after two Republicans, one an assembly member and one a state senate member, to allow the smaller parties, the minor parties with ballot lines, to give, or some people would say to sell, their party line. The governor said he wants that changed so that candidates could get that line, but they would have to go through the petition process. And we would agree with that. So thank you for putting those things out there. I think some of them need further discussion, but thank you for kicking off the discussion.
Thank
I
you.
have a question.
What?
I was struck by your comments about 16-year-olds. I've taught African American history to 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds. You know, in some countries in the world, actually 16-year-olds can vote, in fact, in
I
Latin
know.
and South America. So I just wanted that make you rethink your comments about 16-year-olds here, because I don't think the 16-year-olds here, notwithstanding the public school system, cannot understand how to register to vote and make a decision on their own.
Yes, you make a very good point. I would just, like to think about it more, and I'm speaking for me here.
Okay.
I mean, we haven't discussed it as an organization, but, we did briefly take a stand and discuss this when we were looking for poll workers and allowing 17-year-olds, high school students, to be poll workers. But there's another story there.
My only thought is that I think it's important that we engage young people as early as we possibly can. And I don't know, I mean, it's 18-year-old is 18 is like that's the age. I mean, I actually think it should be lower, but I'm in the minority.
Yeah.
Thank you, Margie, thank you so much. Well, along those lines, maybe, Mark Favors from the Youth Civic Leadership Academy, come on up.
Great timing. Pre-registration. Mark Favors, Youth Civic Leadership Academy, and I just want to talk about pre-registration. Thanks for inviting me, but before I forget, just to deal with what's been talked about, I want to get 2 points out of the way. That research has been done, and in California, 83% of all 18-year-olds remained at home for 1 year compared to 63% of 25-year-olds. So 18-year-olds do stay at home, and and in Hawaii and Florida had a purge rate of pre-registration at only 2% higher than normal registration. And in North Carolina, they did a study which allows pre-registration. Republicans and kids pre-registered for the Republican Party and the Democratic Party at the same rate, which was 30-30. Most kids pre-registered as independents. So there's really no, and these are, studies, empirical evidence, just to get, those two out the way. So basically, 3 years ago, I'm Youth Civic Leadership Academy. We try and teach kids how to be empowered as civic leaders in local, city, and state government. One of these things we teach is that as citizens, we are the boss or in charge, and the electeds work for us. So therefore, I went to Assemblyman Kavanaugh, who even wasn't my elected. I said, I need you to introduce this bill on youth pre-registration. He said, give me a copy of a model bill, and I did, and he introduced it, and the university did good to us, and now on the Senate side, my good friend Senator Jeff Klein carries that bill, as well as Senator Carlucci. So after 3 years of hard work, it looks like hopefully this year it will get passed. So just to talk about what pre-registration is, basically it just allows 16-year-olds to pre-register to vote. They are not able to vote, and it just becomes automatic at 18. 10 other states allow this. Florida and North Carolina are examples I always use because, Mitt Romney won North Carolina, so pre-registration is a bipartisan issue. Matter of fact, when North Carolina got it introduced, they took, in each chamber, they had the youngest Republican and Democrat introduce the bill in the Assembly, and then they had the youngest Republican and Democrat on the Senate side introduce the bill. And it passed. I think only 3 people voted against it in the North Carolina Assembly. So it's basically, it's a bipartisan. It's in 9 states, including Washington, D.C. It has wide support. And the key thing about pre-registration is it's been proven to be effective in increasing youth voter turnout. George McDonald did a study, George Mason University, that showed that in Florida, kids that pre-registered had a higher turnout at 18 of 2%, but key thing was it had a larger impact on African American kids. So kids that were African American that pre-registered voted at a rate of 6% higher compared to those who didn't pre-register. So it's already proven to be effective. It's cost effective and cheap. It costs, I think we got a letter from the state here, it costs less than $10,000. All they do is make adjustments in the software. States like New York already allow 17-year-olds who will turn 18 by election day to be able to pre-register as well. And the key thing with pre-registration is in states like Florida and North Carolina, what they've done is they've implemented it and made it a part of civic and social studies classes, so that way kids have a practical exercise that they can do and not something in the abstract. And the reason why I Ms. Howard Mayer is because I approached Dennis Walcott 3 years ago. I said, well, you know, with mayoral control, you know, you should be able to just implement this like that. Because the problem in Florida is certain counties, the Board of Election mandates that people go into the schools and make this a part, but other counties don't. So I went to, you know, Dennis Walcott, who was deputy mayor at the time. As a matter of fact, it was the afternoon before he became chancellor. And I said, well, under mayoral control, we should be able to implement this easier part of, you know, the curriculum. And then also the studies have shown not only just with schools, you're able to go into juvenile justice facilities, and research shows that actually 16-year-olds are able to pre-register a lot more 16-year-olds than adults are. So this is an activity that's free that they can do. They can set up a table, and now they can have their own pre-registration drives, and this is a good civic engagement activity that doesn't cost any money. So, and the other knocks I had said were the knocks against pre-registration were that kids move, but they really don't move, and there is no bias in political party. And then another note with New York is when I was up in Assembly one time, and I was and a staff member of Assembly said, well, isn't 16 too young? Well, I said, well, in New York, it's 16, you're automatically charged as an adult criminally. So I said, if you don't have no bill that's going to change that, I better not have no problems with you allowing kids to pre-register to vote. So, I mean, so there's really, you know, no argument against it. And finally, you know, the governor and, you know, leaders on both sides of the chamber have finally seen the light, and that it's something that's good. And another side note, people have knocked me, what I was trying to do to get this passed was Senator Gray Ball, the Republican, has a bill which would allow voter registration with hunting licenses. So it passed in the Senate last year since, you know, we had problems getting our bill out of the Senate, but not in the Assembly. I said, well, maybe we should partner our bill, but I think what's unique about that is if that bill were to pass, upstate, you can get a hunting license at like Walmart. So therefore, that would expand, in theory, you know, with about 200,000 youth who fish or hunt in New York, kids would be able to pre-register and register vote at Walmart. So that would, or other different places, sporting goods stores that have. So I think that would be a great, unique opportunity, although it might be a different demographic. But I think it would be good to be able to have kids to be able to go get a pair of Nikes or something, or go to Walmart and be able to, you know, pre-register or register to vote.
Excuse me, are you saying that people can get a hunting license at 16?
In New York, it's mandated. In New York, and fishing. In New York, if you hunt or fish.
So you're saying that people can, 16-year-olds are presumed old enough to be able to handle a gun safely, but that they're not able to vote, or pre-register, or at least pre-register. Is that what you're saying that the opposition is saying?
Well, I mean, hunting, I'm from Colorado, so hunting doesn't necessarily mean a gun, but I mean, New York mandates that even for fishing licenses, at 16, you have to have a license.
Oh, okay.
So, I mean, hunting is probably a smaller number, but for fishing, you know, at 16 years old, you have to go get a license. So, those places like, you know, Walmart and different other sporting goods stores would be open for a lot of youth to be able to pre-register and register to vote, which I think is a unique place to be able to go to a sporting goods store and be able to, you know, register to vote. Even though it might not be a demographic that, you know, certain political groups, would like.
Thank you.
You win.
He convinced you, huh, Marty?
Okay, well, since we're on the topic of expanding voting, maybe I'd like to ask Sebastian McGuire from Councilmember Daniel Drum's office to come up.
Thank you, Chair Chang and committee members. I'm reading a statement on behalf of Councilmember Daniel Drum. I am a New York City Council member representing the 25th District, which includes Jackson Heights, Elmhurst, Corona, Lefrak City, Woodside, and Rego Park. I also serve as chair of the Immigration Committee. My district's population is estimated to be 68% foreign-born, one of the highest figures in the city. Unfortunately, it also has one of the lowest levels of voter participation. In immigrant-rich New York City, 1 in 5 residents cannot vote. Many have not yet completed the long and arduous process to citizenship, although they will eventually become eligible. Many others are in different legal statuses or even without documentation. These residents are often eager to become involved in the democratic process, yet their voices are severely limited by the fact that they cannot vote for the local officials who make the decisions that will most directly impact their daily lives. This problem faced by my constituents and many taxpayers across the city prompted me to introduce a bill to allow immigrants here lawfully to vote in municipal elections. Introduction 410 would expand democracy and civic participation in a way that will make this city a better place for everyone. The goals of 410 very much fit with the mission of the Campaign Finance Board's Voter Assistance Unit to promote voter registration, voting, and civic engagement through community outreach and partnerships with public and private organizations. If enacted, Introduction 410 could benefit greatly from the CFB's voter outreach and education efforts. With the potential enfranchisement of a large segment of the city's population, the CFB's efforts will become especially critical to reaching and educating new municipal voters. I encourage the CFB to strengthen its efforts in the following areas. Regardless of when non-citizen voting is enacted, language access has been a critical part of voter outreach. One important measure is translating voter outreach materials into languages besides the ones in which voter registration forms are printed. The CFB should work with community-based organizations that serve our city's immigrants. Many of these organizations have already been involved in issues of immigrant civic participation. Announcements should be published in broadcast media outlets that have large immigrant audiences. Outreach should be tailored to the way immigrants actually receive information. Emerging communities, that is relatively small but rapidly growing groups, should be included in voter outreach efforts. The New York City Votes Street team needs to reach even more primarily immigrant neighborhoods. The Your Voice Counts program, which focuses on women voters, should include special efforts to engage immigrant women with the linguistic and cultural capacity to reach these communities. The 1,000 voter registration drive challenge should reach the places where immigrants congregate. While several CFB initiatives do reach certain immigrants, an initiative dedicated to immigrants is needed as well. The CFB should continue to strengthen its work with city agencies. The Commission on Human Rights has made voter materials available at citizenship oath ceremonies and should increase such efforts. The Department of Education helps distribute registration forms to graduating seniors, but parent outreach is also important. The CFB should engage the Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs in reaching voters. As the CFB has done with the hip-hop community, there should be outreach at Latino, African, Asian, European, and lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender cultural events. By strengthening efforts around immigrant U.S. citizen voters now, the CFB will be prepared for reforms that enfranchise non-citizen voters. Introduction 410 represents the potential to reinvigorate our local democracy, and I hope the CFB will play a vital role to realizing the lofty goals of this legislation. Thank you.
Certainly, VAAC absolutely is committed to reaching out to citizens and immigrant communities, and I think our record is clear on that, and we think more needs to be done, but we're building on a fairly strong foundation. I just want to clarify a couple points about the councilman's legislation. He would enfranchise non-citizen immigrant residents to vote. How many cities currently have non-citizen resident voting?
I believe there are several cities in Maryland, Tacoma Park being among them, and there was a representative from that jurisdiction at our hearing in City Council. I want to say 5 or 7, but there are a handful of cities in Maryland. There are I believe 4 jurisdictions, at least in Massachusetts, that have passed this. They're awaiting enabling legislation at the state level. This has happened in New York City before with the school board elections in a different way, but that sort of overcomes any fear about doing this, and that actually included undocumented immigrants as well. This is only for people here lawfully.
Well, that's my second question. It seems to imply that undocumented immigrants would be included in this legislation. Is that correct?
That's not correct. Actually, it's only immigrants here lawfully.
Okay, so that is the limiting. Are you, as the council member, concerned about how this might change the social compact? You know, which citizenship is, which of course, as you say, is one of the things we do is outreach and citizenship ceremonies. It's one of the most beautiful things we can do. But are you, as a council member, concerned about the impact of having non-citizens vote in terms of changing the social compact in pretty fundamental ways from what's historically been?
Well, in this globalized society, I think that notion of citizenship being so inextricably tied to voting is not necessarily valid. In fact, that was the view in the past. So, for example, we'd simply be catching up, we'd be restoring, I mean, the council member's position is that we'd be restoring voting rights, because historically as a country, we've had voting rights for non-citizens, and even for undocumented people. It didn't really start to change in this country until about the 1920s. So it's actually a restoration in that way. It's also sort of a catching up in this globalized world in the sense that about 45 countries around the world already have this, mainly in Western Europe. A lot of countries in Latin America have this as some form of this as well.
I have a couple of comments. Thank you very much for coming. One, if we can circulate, because I did join our Director of External Affairs, Eric Friedman, who testified at the hearing last week. And it was really wonderful testimony, and Council Member Drum called it very good constructive criticism. And he was very grateful for it, so we can also pass that around for the members to see. The other thing I wanted to say, that with the naturalization ceremonies, I wanted you to know that we do work with the Human Rights, the Commission for Human Rights, and they go with us once a month to the ceremonies. I do know they also do Brooklyn, but they come to us in Manhattan with our tour in Manhattan, and they bring 2 people each time. So we have a wonderful partnership with them, and that's kind of based on the agency-based voter participation program that we have, and they are one of those agencies, but it's supposed to be about voter form distribution. But in many ways, we look to find new, innovative ways that we can work together. And that was one of the ways that we came up, that we could work together with them, is that we go together as a team and register those people who are newly naturalized. And I'd like to say that, I think up to about 2 months ago, we had 89% of the people registered to vote while we were there. So that's one thing I wanted to share. And then also, absolutely, I agree with us working more in the immigrant communities. Unfortunately, we had someone who was going to testify today who couldn't make it, but it was the National Association of Latino Elected Officials. And we're currently coordinating a 5-borough tour with them, all about why are the municipal elections important to the Latino community? So this is something that we're working on, and surely there'll be a strong presence in Queens as well, and hopefully for our next meeting, we'll have more to share about that.
And Councilmember Drum recognizes your efforts around the oath ceremony, and feels that's a wonderful idea. That's perfect. That's what we should be doing once people get their citizenship, equipping them with that registration form so we can get that in as soon as possible.
I have just a quick question. You, in your testimony, mentioned that the outreach should be tailored to the way immigrants receive information, and you later on talk about using different media outlets and organizations that reach, like we did with the hip hop community. I guess I was wondering, is there anything else that you mean by that in particular the way the immigrant communities receive information?
I think that probably the best individuals and groups to talk to about this are the grassroots organizations, a lot of smaller immigrant organizations who actually know better than we do individually. And that's sort of there's wonderful work being done around, for example, technology and media, but those might not be necessarily the ways that a lot of the newer immigrants get their information. They might get them in more traditional ways, they might get them in ways that we still don't recognize. And again, I think it's worth having those conversations with some of those smaller immigrant organizations, because they know exactly what reaches their community and how their community
And we have worked with them,
Right.
to distribute the voter guide in the past, and local distribution and also in language distribution areas. So, we're happy to continue that work.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you.
So, along the line of topics of immigrants, is Ms. Ada Udine here? Okay. All right, so I'd like to call up Rachel Faust from Citizens Union.
And I have some written copies if
Terrific.
folks want to look at that as well, so I'll try not to read from it. Good evening, Chair Chang and members of the Voter Assistance and Advisory Committee. My name is Rachel Foss. I'm the Policy and Research Manager of Citizens Union, a nonpartisan good government group dedicated to making democracy work for all New Yorkers. So first, I guess I'd like to talk a little bit about the programs that you mentioned in the annual report, and then get to some of the legislative proposals, since I know you specifically wanted us to speak about that. So, we're really pleased to see the VAAC engaging in a wide array of programs. I think some of the highlights are the New York City Vote Streets team, the 1,000 voter registration drive, and partnering with city agencies to get the voter registration forms out, and then also do email blasts to remind folks about the election dates. We're also happy to see the mobile tools that you've got and the social media aspect of your work. And I know our organization has shared a lot of your tweets and a lot of your Facebook posts, to try to get the word out a little bit further. I think with all these programs, it's clear that the VAAC is visible in the community to advance voter registration and participation. And something we'd like to encourage you to do is look more comprehensively to try to track some of the voter registration and participation information as a result of your program. So I think in your report, you talk a lot about the number of forms that were distributed. Something we're interested in seeing is, well, how many do the agencies actually collect and fill out? And we know that some of that's a problem with data. I'll speak about this later, but there's a bill that in the council that would actually require agencies to put on their forms codes so that you could track what they were returning. So that's something we'd encourage you to look at as part of your legislative agenda. But there may be other ways for the VAAC to try to connect with the agencies to get a sense of how well they're doing, so that we can better target outreach. I know other folks have spoken about the connection you have with civic groups, and something else that Citizens Union is doing in partnership with CFB is the debate program, so we're very happy to be doing that this fall. And we also participated in the National Voter Registration Day. And I know Onita and I were at a forum in Flatbush for the Haitian community, so I appreciate the local level outreach you do. Looking at the legislative proposals, we don't have a current position on Wilson Pakula, though we actually in 1947 did not support its enactment. We're looking at it currently, since that was quite some time ago. So we can certainly share our position when we develop it. But regarding the rest of the proposals, we do strongly support them. I'd like to highlight in particular establishing nonpartisan election administration structure. I think the fact that the VAAC is looking both at structural issues and administrative issues as well as some of the more traditional ways of increasing voter participation is really important. We've developed a comprehensive set of recommendations on a structure that a nonpartisan election administration structure, actually in 2009, that I can submit as part of a testimony if you'd like to have a copy. But just in brief, what we support is at the state level having a chief elections officer responsible for the majority of policy decisions and a nonpartisan elections board that's responsible more for quasi-judicial functions. And then having this mirrored at the local level with the chief local elections officer and a board of canvassers with a little bit more limited jurisdiction. And I think the bipartisan structure we have in New York is somewhat unusual. There are only a couple other states that we know of that have a similar structure, being Virginia and Illinois. We don't necessarily support the Department of State model that most states have, but I think you cited Wisconsin as something to look at. But we'd like to have you consider our proposal about this as well. Regarding the runoff election, we support moving it to 3 weeks after the primary for this year. And I think as Marjorie from the City Club mentioned, we've proposed to couple this with a pilot program this year for military and permanent absentee voters. And I think something to think about is there are only 3,000 military voters registered in New York City. So this is, I think, an optimal pilot in that it's a small number. It's something that can even possibly be done in a hand count. There's some issues with the machines, but we think that it's a way to start thinking about the problem of the runoff election that's going to keep resurfacing every 4 years. We do support instant runoff voting, however, as an alternative, so we'd like to see if perhaps that could be done for 2017. Regarding several of the recommendations in the VAAC's list, we support the Voter Empowerment Act, which is sponsored by Assemblymember Kavanaugh, which has a lot of the recommendations that you mentioned in your report, including modernizing the voter registration process, allowing for pre-registration of 16 and 17-year-olds, and allowing for party registration to be changed closer to the date of the election. If I remember correctly, that bill actually, in the discussions of amendments to the bill, there was the issue of what happens with 16 and 17-year-olds when we move. And if my memory serves me correctly, I think the bill actually addresses some of those issues, some of the administrative issues around there. So that might be something for you to look at a little bit to address some of the questions that came up today. We also support same-day registration. We recognize that it's a bit of a heavy lift with amending the state constitution, so there's also the alternative of lessening it to 10 days before the election, which is the minimum required by the Constitution. We also support that. We also support early voting, and we've developed a joint position with our good government colleagues. So specifically, we support it for 2 weeks prior to the election, inclusive of 2 weekends. We additionally support having uniform statewide standards to determine the minimum number of locations for each county to consider the type of election, the voting population, the number of active voters, the number of assembly districts per county, and population density, for example. Knowing that there might not be a one-size-fits-all approach, but there should be some minimum standards for poll sites throughout the state. I think as I presented last year, there's some additional legislative proposals we'd like the VAAC to consider. I know that the VAAC supported in a resolution the bill in the council sponsored by Inez Dickens, Intro 613, that would allow for email notification of election dates. There's several other proposals we support. Intro 721, which would establish a poll worker program with city agencies. There's also Intro 728 that would provide registration forms to parents enrolling children in school. Intro 760, which would require City Board of Elections to report for particular city agencies the number of New Yorkers who completed voter registration forms. This goes back to what I was mentioning earlier about how it would be great to have that data about how well the agencies are doing so that the VAAC can follow up with them if needed. We also support Intro 69, which would expand the city's voter guide to include more races than just beyond the city races, so state and federal elections. We know you're doing that in practice via email, but we'd like to see that expanded to the print version. And we also support Intro 778 that would require the City Board of Elections to report data in the mayor's management report to the City Council. And I think, given the alignment with the VAAC schools and many of the initiatives in these pieces of legislation, we think there are additional items that are worthy of your consideration as you look at comprehensive ways to change elections and increase participation. So thanks again for allowing me to testify. I'm happy to answer any questions.
I have one question.
Sure.
I think it would be helpful, I'd love to hear what your testimony was, Citizens Union testimony was in response to Councilmember Drum's bill.
We don't have a current position on that bill. I did attend the hearing, and I think there are a lot of important issues discussed, something that we're looking at right now. So when we do have a position, we'll definitely let you know.
Thank you.
I do want to disclose of that before I make my decisions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much.
And I'll give you our report from 2009, which has our election administrative proposals.
Fantastic. Is there anybody else from the public who would like to testify? Will?
Hi, Will Colgrove from Councilmember Gail Brewer's office, and just sort of piggybacking off of everyone's testimony today, I just wanted to commend you guys for your report. As I think it's been noted, and all the work you guys have done in voter registration. Particularly excited about this Lincoln Center partnership. I'm glad I was able to play a small role in connecting you guys to that. Just wanted to mention on the legislative agenda, we do support the majority of you guys' recommendations, particularly I think one thing that would be great, again, the more we can talk about this, the better. The changing of the runoff date, I think, is a very big issue, as came up at our budget hearing today with the Board of Elections, and again, at least by most people's accounts, requires action from Albany. So any advocacy anyone in this room and everyone on this board can do in trying to convince Albany that the date does need to be changed for the runoff election, I think it's very important to keep reiterating that point. We also support instant runoff voting, simplifying the voter registration system, again with the Voter Empowerment Act, moving the party enrollment deadlines, another thing that Councilmember Brewer is supportive of, as well as it was great to hear from the Civic Academy regarding the pre-registration of youth voters. We've been involved in conversations about that, as well as allowing 16 and 17-year-olds to serve on community boards, something Councilmember Brewer is very supportive of. Again, also expanding, I think, early voting and or no excuse absentee voting would do a lot to alleviate a lot of the problems we see on election day. And again, I think those problems, when people have to wait 4 or 5, 6 hours to vote, doesn't really encourage voter turnout. It's an important thing to consider. As always, there are, of course, administrative issues with implementing those sorts of changes, but we're very supportive of that. And also to say in regards to Councilmember Drum's bill, we did hold a hearing on it last week. Councilmember Brewer is a co-sponsor of the legislation. We are supportive of allowing immigrants legally present in New York City to vote in municipal elections. We do recognize there are significant administrative challenges as well as potential legal questions. We believe the legal arguments are not necessarily accurate, but we do understand the administrative challenges that would exist, and we're certainly willing to work with both the board and CFB to try to address those issues, but happy to answer any questions.
I have a question. Just elaborate a little further on what happened in the budget hearing today regarding the runoff.
I think there were numerous questions about the Board of Elections' ability to conduct a successful runoff election given the very short timeline. We have been advocating for over a year that the state legislature needs to act to move that to move the deadline. Thus far, no action is taken place. And I think the board is rightfully concerned with whether or not they will be able to successfully conduct a runoff election on the new voting machines in the 2-week period currently mandated.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely, Marjorie, absolutely.
Will mention the new voting machines weren't able to. Now, there's a bill in the state legislature that would bring back the mechanical lever machines for the runoff. Was that mentioned?
That did come up as a piece of legislation that has been proposed again. There seems to be, there was a piece of legislation that passed on the Senate level, if I'm not mistaken, that would allow for that. There's
Yes.
not a companion on the Assembly. It is our position that we do not support the reintroduction of lever voting machines for a number of reasons, most notably the lack of access for people with disabilities. There are a number of concerns we have. People often forget that those machines had a tendency to break down. We will look back more fondly, I think perhaps it's warranted, but we do not support the reintroduction of the lever voting machines.
Thank you.
All right, Freddie. Thank you so much. There's a presentation now on the video voter guide. That, I'm going to give the update on that. Video voter guide is set to launch for its third presentation to the city. First introduced in 2005, and Renata has been helming this, but asked me to speak to it. This will be the third installment. It will include over 200 candidates, the estimation. We've been working with the Mayor's Office of Film and Entertainment. The production company for the video voter guide has been selected. It will be Next Millennium Productions, based in Lower Manhattan. The pre-production starts June 10th. And they'll be scheduling of candidates and graphics and all that. The shooting schedule will occur between July 22nd and August 13th. And the production company will deliver the files to the Campaign Finance Board by August 23rd. New York City Media will then air the video voter guide for 7 days prior to the primary and general elections. And all candidate clips will be available on the Campaign Finance Board website along with the voter guide and via social media for the first time. So it's quite an undertaking, and it is proven to, I think, help access and spread the word, and we'll evaluate its success this time around. We are beginning again, so keep an eye out for the video voter guide. Good. Thank you, John. Okay, next we have a demo of the New York City Votes mobile tool, and I'll just make the usual caveat. This is the first time that this software has been shown in public. It's not a completed application, but there are, I think, significant pieces that have been done, and I'm very proud of what the team has done. To put this in context, we've started from the premise of creating a much more seamless end-to-end experience for participants in the voting process in New York City. And this includes candidates, constituents, as well as the voting administration, particularly at the CFP. We've adopted a strategy of starting from the inside and moving out to the public. So the first place where we have, where we started is actually by creating a tool that makes life easier for candidates, for constituents, and for the CFP's audit staff, particularly around the area of small donations. So I think it's important to remind everybody that part of our mission at the Campaign Finance Board with voter assistance is to expand the participation of everyday people in New York City in every aspect of the electoral process, particularly, especially the area of campaign finance. As people are aware, because of the city's matching funds program, a $10 contribution can be worth as much as $70. And this leverage increases the voice of small donors around the city. And we want to encourage candidates to be able to go out and solicit those kinds of contributions to make it easier for contributors to be able to make those contributions as well. In the past, these types of contributions have created lots of headaches for candidates, contributors, and Campaign Finance Board staff alike. And so the first tool that we're going to demonstrate today is our attempt to try to ease some of those roadblocks. So with that, I want to just say, there are a number of folks who, a very long laundry list of people who deserve to be thanked. I don't have time to do today, but in particular, I want to thank the candidate services team from the Campaign Finance Board, the Campaign Finance Board's technology team, without whom this would not be possible at all. We have received significant private sector contributions of time and effort for design and software development. And I'm very, very proud of the work that Method and Pivotal Labs in particular have done to bring this to reality. And here at the table are two folks that I work very closely with. Alan Holder, who as a volunteer has served as a project manager on this, and Michael Carlson, who works in my firm, full disclosure from my private sector life, has been serving as a product manager for this application. So with this, gentlemen, hand it over to you.
Yeah, perfect. Well, thank you for letting us show this stuff. We're very excited. We've still got a little bit of a ways to go, but hopefully this is indicative of where we're going. So we'll start just kind of showing where we are and what we've built thus far. And we'll move into showing just a couple screens of what's to come next. So we're trying to improve the technology experience of democracy, and we're trying to do that one touch point at a time. And our first product release, which is about 2 weeks away, is going to help candidates receive credit card contributions. So this has been difficult in the past because there are real technical and financial infrastructure challenges. And so this sort of helps solve those problems. It also helps solve some of the compliance challenges that Art alluded to, that it becomes challenging to track all these contributions, particularly when there are smaller contributions. So this hopefully lets more people become involved in the process. The net of what we've created is that at the end of each transaction, money is en route to a candidate's bank account. And all of the due diligence, all of the information to help due diligence is available for a candidate. And soon there will be some integration with some technology CFP is creating to help get these sort of en masse transactions uploaded and into the C-Smart compliance system. So here we are on a sign-up page. First, a word on sign-up. The first release for the candidates will be something that we call whitelisting. So only folks who are kind of pre-approved for the process will be involved in the tool. Fortunately, we have a list of everyone who is hand-raised to be a part of this next election cycle. So anyone who is, by the filing day, said that they are running for a public office will be able to use this tool to get contributions. So with that being said, let's log in. Our candidate user at example.com. Great. So these candidates that are listed here are from last election. We're not using the live data today. But let's go ahead and get a contribution. So imagine if I were, say, a treasurer or a candidate, and I was at a campaign event, and I wanted to solicit a contribution from a contributor. So with NYC Votes, I can collect all the information that's necessary directly on my device. So the first thing that we're going to do is enter an amount. So I can select $5, or $25, or even enter a separate amount right there on the page. Now the key thing to notice here is on the bottom of the page that actually this number is updating over time. And that's because we're messaging the user that there are publicly matched funds available and that their contribution can potentially be worth more. So this is great because it can prompt conversations about public matching, or the user can actually click on the I button on the right and get additional information for themselves. So So let's go back and set the contribution for $100 and continue forward. So this page is the doing business compliance page. And as a campaign treasurer, I can enter this information, or I can have it the person I'm soliciting a contribution from enter it themselves. On the back end, we save all this information so that the campaigns can easily sort through all their contributions and do a self-audit and take a look at everything that comes through and easily sort through that data in order to find potential problems or problematic contributions before they are too far into the process. You can see that there would be a lot of great features that we could build in on top of this in the future, such as getting directly into the doing business portion of the database in order to ensure that we can do this on the fly. There are lots of great features that we can really implement in the future, and we're really looking forward to those. So the contributor can read all the disclosure information that they need to, and go through all the doing business requirements and elect to move forward. So this next page is pretty straightforward. It's the personal information page. So to collect information about the contributor. The key information here is that these are all the things that are required for a candidate, and that those are all going into the back end. And then a helpful feature at the end is this use for billing information flag, which enables us to transfer the information across in order to do compliance with credit card companies. Great, so here we are on the credit card page. You can see all of our data has been copied down below. We're going to enter in some dummy credit card information, but one of the interesting things about this page is that we're actually doing on-the-fly testing against all sorts of criteria. So we're making sure that the address and zip and all that information that really has to be just right for a contribution to be valid for public matching is all captured. And we can also message the user immediately if there is a problem with their contribution right on this page, so that we don't get down to kind of the long line of having to go back and figure out affidavits and to make sure that there's a compliant contribution. So one of the things that we're also working on is to enable the mobile device, to capture a credit card swipe via the 3.5 millimeter jack, the headphone jack. And as soon as we've got that kind of solved, our folks at our friends at TechServe have offered to really help install all that hardware and to help our candidates get up to speed. So let's go ahead and submit. We have the final page here, which is just sort of a summary overview, which lets the contributor know all the information that has been captured about them, but also for them to be able to receive a receipt via email the same way that you could via Amazon or wherever, in order to get all the information, have something for your public records. Now, the application isn't just restricted to candidates or to campaign treasurers, but there's actually the capability for, right off the bat, for anyone to invite a campaigner who's working on their team into the application as well. So say there's someone who is hitting the streets or an event or working directly with a campaign, they can be invited and see a more restricted view of the application in order to solicit contributions. So that's kind of where we are today. At the end of each of these transactions, we can send a file to the user that has all of the information about compliance that they need in order to make sure that that contribution can be ready for public records. We're just going to take just a second to show you some of the features that are coming up for the voter portion, which I think is what everyone is really excited about, is figuring out how do we get this in the hands of actual voters too. So there are a couple of key benefits to the voter as well. So first and foremost, to find and research candidates. They get to see who is running and what they're running for, and this will be available to everyone. They get to search for candidates of particular interest. They can get in-depth information about specific candidates and interact via social media. They can contribute to a campaign and become part, closer part of that campaign, just like the campaign themselves can solicit contributions. They can personalize the voting experience by entering their location in order to regionalize their ballot. They can also get notified of important deadlines, how long the election is from being away, when they need to register. They can learn where to go on election day, and they can also find out who won a particular election. And all throughout the process, they're able to learn more and get detailed information about frequent points of questions or confusions. And so that's kind of where we are and where we're going. Opening it up for some internal feedback in the next few days, and hopefully getting in candidates' hands in a few weeks.
Very cool. Any questions? Comments?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Can you search by position? I didn't see that in the search bar.
Yes, there's a way to toggle between the two.
I have a question. I think I answered this and I missed it. Is it going to be, what platforms is it going to be used on?
So it's a web app, it's web-based, so it'll be available on any smartphone or tablet with a modern browser. So that should cover almost all of them, but we'll also have warning text for devices that we haven't explicitly tested for or that might be outside of the regular paradigms.
There is something I just really want, you said a comment. I do have a comment. I know we talked about, and we brought everyone together to talk about the annual report today, and we solicited your thoughts on different things that we had in there. But and I'm happy that you did that. And you said you enjoyed the annual report, but one of the things that I really wanted to say, that what was really driving that annual report and all of the staff here that really worked on it, is that we had a chair who has convinced us that we can revolutionize voting and the voting experience in New York City. And we are, behind him 100%, and so is this committee. And so what you're seeing here is that evolution of how we can get closer to bring people in, and then how we can empower people on different levels. And there's a place for everyone to buy in. So I thank you very much for the work that you've done. I thank you, Chairman Chang, as well. And I really, just ask people to partner with us, because really the best is yet to come.
Yeah, I want to second that. I mean, that's this project is the first thing I ever talked to Art about when we talked about this committee, and it's really great to see it. And I know he thinks that maybe he had to drag us, kicking and screaming, but no, I mean, we are really, really thrilled. I think this is such a great tool for the voters and for the candidates, and so we're really happy to put a lot of work. All the work that you've done on it, I mean, it's really amazing. All the work that Art has done in mustering, a huge commitment from the private community. It's really amazing.
I just want to point out there's a representative from TechServe who's actually stepped up. TechServe, some people know it as a local Mac shop on 23rd Street, but they run every year their own voter registration drives in their offices for any of their customers, and on their own, completely independent of the Campaign Finance Board. And they've stepped up to interface directly with the candidate services team to be able to provide the private sector support on a pro bono basis to make this a reality. I also wanted to sort of say, just for everybody's benefit, that technology can do a lot, but it wouldn't happen without a tremendous amount of collaboration. And collaboration is why technology for the civic good often doesn't come together. And the collaboration here has been absolutely amazing between all the folks in the various departments of the Campaign Finance Board, as well as a wide array of folks in the private sector. On the committee itself, I would like to sort of say that when things have appeared like they're moving slowly, there are certain members of this committee who didn't hesitate to pick up the phone and call me, find out why things weren't moving along more quickly, and expressing concern that we were not going to actually achieve anything before this election. And so to those members who will be unnamed, but they know who they are, I want to thank you for your persistence. And I also want to just thank Valerie Vasquez here at the Board of Elections. The Board of Elections takes a lot of heat And we have, she is really working very hard to try to help bring what we're working on into reality at the Board of Elections. So we'll see where that goes, and we'll be reporting more on that in the coming meetings. So with that, I think we'll bring the annual hearing to a close. I think we're going to have a very, very brief public meeting. So do I have a motion to bring the public meeting to order?
So moved. Second.
All in favor? I think we have one item, which is the approval of the minutes from our February 11th, 2013 meeting. Do I have a motion to approve?
Can I just make one
Yes.
amendment? I'm sorry, we unfortunately spelled Alan Holder's name incorrectly on the draft that you were sent, so we will be correcting that in the final minutes.
And I just have to abstain because we weren't present.
Yes. Motion approved?
Oh, yeah, okay. Okay.
Motion, is this motion second?
Yeah.
All in favor? Aye.
All right.
All right. So do I have a motion to bring the public meeting to a close?
That quick, huh?
Not quick. All right, so, okay, all in favor? Aye. All right, we're done. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.